This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits, and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from the X-Zone Broadcasting Network. And I'd like to encourage you to go to our website at www.xzbn.net for the latest in our program schedule. And if you get a chance, stop by and see me at my website, www.paranormalstakeout.com, or my team's website at www.paranormalfbi.com. Well, if you were with me during my opening show last week, you heard that I've been in law enforcement for going on 37 years. In fact, February will be my 37th anniversary. And most of the time has been as a detective or a criminal justice educator. Many times during those years, I've been asked by folks, how in the world, as somebody with my background, how can you believe in the paranormal? How can you investigate the paranormal? You can't put your hands on it. It's just not something that's real. Now, I've answered that question in a couple of different ways, but generally it comes along these lines. If you were the victim of a crime or the suspect in a crime or target of a criminal investigation, do you want a detective, an investigator that is going to come in and make decisions on that case based upon what the evidence says on its surface, based upon what societal norms says is right and wrong? Or would you want to have a detective or an investigator that is willing to look at the evidence for what it is, look at all sides, look at all the possibilities? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we are going to do on this show. We're going to look at all the evidence as critically as we possibly can for the purpose of putting together a case to take to a court of our peers and prove the existence of the paranormal. You know, with that, I have a terrific guest tonight. I'm really happy to have Mr. Dave Spinks with us. Dave is a veteran of both the military and federal law enforcement for 20 years, retiring in 2011. He has investigated cases all over the world, both in here and in Europe. Investigated some of the most haunted places and notoriously haunted places in this country and abroad. He currently investigates the paranormal full-time, but the most interesting part there is he not only investigates ghosts and ghostly phenomenon, but also UFOs and cryptozoology. It's a real pleasure to have David Spinks. And I do want to mention his website real quick, www.davespinksparanormalinvestigations.com. Please visit it. With that, Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Larry.
Great to have you. And, you know, your website's super interesting. I was looking at it. I was really amazed at the people that you've worked with and the evidence you've collected. Tell us, Dave, what got you started? You've been doing this for 30 years. What got you started in this business?
Well, you know, I often tell this story, Larry, on other shows, and what really got me intrigued with it was my grandfather was a World War II veteran. Okay, smoked like a freight train, smoked the old Camel non-filter cigarettes, and he was so bad he only had like a quarter of one lung left, and he had a trach and everything, and he carried around a little oxygen tank with him, and he still smoked, right? And it was one of those things you just knew it was a matter of time before the old guy was not going to be with us no more, and this is my mom's father I'm talking about. And I happened to be at my dad's house, which was like 30 miles away during the summer visiting him. And I was asleep one night in the bed at Dad's house, and I woke up out of a dead sleep, sat straight up in the bed, and there's my mom's dad, my grandfather, standing at the foot of the bed, as clear as me and you, looking at me. And I kind of did the old double take and shook my head. I'm like, Papa, what are you doing here? And he didn't say anything. He just smiled at me. And then he disappeared right in front of my face. And I chalked it up as, being a skeptic, of course, back in those days, I chalked it up as a bad dream, as any kid would, a weird dream. What was that all about? So the next day I called up to my grandma's house because I had that dream and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And my uncle from out of state answered. And I said, what are you doing there? And he said, no one called you yet, Dave? I said, no, why? He said, well, your grandpa passed away last night and everybody's coming in for the funeral.
Oh my.
So I kind of just dropped the phone, and was just shooken up by that because of the dream I had the night before. Well, long story short, I never said anything to anyone about the dream until about 6 months later. We were all at Grandma's house eating dinner. Most of the family was there, and I just came out and told everybody about the dream I had the night Grandpa died, and one by one, most of their faces went funny, and they all had the same dream. Not everyone, but most of them had the same dream, and I knew right then and there he had come to say goodbye to everybody.
Wow.
After he had passed. That's the feeling I got from it. And ever since then, I've been pursuing the paranormal. When I could, obviously, we would go to all these really cool locations when I was a kid because my stepdad was in the Air Force. So I did a lot of traveling. I was fortunate enough to do a lot of traveling, and I got to go to a lot of Native American sites, and I read everything I could get back in those days on the paranormal, and came across different reports of creature sightings and all these different strange and unusual happenings. And it kind of became a hobby of mine, and I just pursued it as much as I could over my work career.
Cool.
And
Dave, got to take a break right now. I hear the music coming on, so
right.
We'll be back to you in just a quick second. So join us again on...
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere, Florida. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine such as hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining rooms can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you visit, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic downtown Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, and we're having a terrific conversation tonight with David Spinks. You know, Dave, I'm kind of remiss. You're a military veteran. I want to thank you for your service to our country, not only in the military, but also in the federal law enforcement field. So thank you very much for all you've done for us.
Hey, thank you, and same to you.
Thank you, man. Well, listen, you know, being a cop and being in the military, that's a very unique set of skills, especially for our field. Tell me how your military and LE background has helped you with your work in paranormal investigation and research.
Well, you know, I think first and foremost, as you know, Larry, you know, you are subject to massive amounts of training when you're in the military and law enforcement, and you are taught to become a trained observer, and that gives you a little bit of an edge on the average Joe, I would say, you know, because
Agreed.
You're taught to look for things that the average person would not normally notice, in my point of view, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's been a huge help with mine. Of course, my background being criminal investigations, you know, interviewing skills, and you're right, trying to find things that the average person doesn't notice. Along those lines, and I'm a big stickler on evidence and evidence collection and preservation. Give me an idea, if you can, or listeners an idea on your techniques. How do you collect evidence? What do you do to preserve it? That sort of thing.
Well, you know, one of my favorite types of evidence to collect in the paranormal is EVPs. You know, and there's a whole, I mean, we could spend an entire evening talking about different things that have to do with that. But what I try to do, just to give folks a basic understanding of the way I try to do things, first of all, I love EVPs because if you're in a room or a building all by yourself, or it's just you and one of your other investigators, and you're asking a question and you get a direct, relevant, pertinent response to that question from a voice that's not you or your partner that's in there with you, you really have something there. You know, that's something tangible that you can say, hey, that wasn't either one of us, and we know there's no one else in the building. And then what I try to do is I try to get confirmation and make them reiterate that, you know, answer that question for a second and even a third time. And in some cases, I've actually gotten that. And that, to me, is very compelling evidence right there. And that's just one small example, you know, of collecting evidence in the paranormal. You know, those recorders, you know, the human, when you go into all the hertz and the megahertz and all the human range of hearing, it's very, very interesting to understand how a voice that was not a living person is captured on those devices. It'll really blow you away if you delve deep into it.
I got to agree with you. Some of my most compelling evidence have been along the lines of EVPs also. One of the things I like to try and do is what I call triangulate it. In other words, catching an EVP at the same time I'm using a K2 meter or a MEL meter or some other device, and getting two or three pieces of equipment registering an event at the same time. So I agree with you.
Yeah, when you can get a response on a say a recorder, and then you have other devices that you're actually taking hits on at the same time, that's even more compelling. Via temperature changes, or you have you're getting an EMF fluctuation, or whatever the case may be. The more stuff you can take, document that's going on at the same time, the better in your evidence collect.
Absolutely, and I tend to be a little bit more critical of things that aren't scientific, but I had an incident recently where my son was using a set of divining rods, and I had a K2 and a Mel meter, and all three of them were registering answers to the questions at the same time. That was pretty exciting. We managed to even get that on video, which was even better. So what's your most important tool? What's your favorite piece of equipment that you use to collect the evidence?
Well, as far as mechanical devices, like I said, I love EVPs, and I use different types of recorders. I use digital. I've actually done some reel-to-reel stuff, and just old style cassette tapes. The magnetic ones seem to capture a lot of EVPs for whatever reason. But like I said, the most pertinent thing to me is to get a tangible, relevant response to any questions I'm asking via a name, or a good answer to my question that is backed up in factual information, is very, very good. But I always tell folks the best piece of equipment you can take on a paranormal investigation is yourself, because I don't know about you, Larry, doing what you've done for so many years as myself, you kind of build this gut instinct, and you kind of, when the hair on the back of your neck stands up, or you get that gut feeling, something's going on, and you can honestly feel that tangible change in the atmosphere where you're at. The longer you do this, the more open you become to it.
I agree, and being open is huge. Now, I like using a lot of the modern equipment too, but sometimes some of the old school stuff works, such as a simple thermometer and a glass of water for temperature change. How about a compass? You combine that with some of your personal feelings. That can be really helpful, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And you got to, kind of try to tie it all in together. You walk into a room, you're feeling this way. So then you try to capture that on with a device of whatever kind you want to use via EMF or recorder, and then try to capture it on video. And then if you put all that stuff together, you really got something there,
Absolutely. And sometimes, especially folks that are just getting into the field, they feel that they've got to have all the fanciest, newest equipment. And while that stuff's good, it's even better if you know how to use it properly. But a lot of times, just some of the times, the simple stuff can work just as well. If all the evidence you've caught, of all the things that you've come across out there, what's your most unique piece of evidence?
Well, I've got several really good ones, and one of the ones that really there's several, but a couple of times I've been physically attacked by something unseen on a couple of different occasions, and that really is it's really unnerving, and it's very, very hard to explain, scientifically. I can't figure out a way. I still have not figured out a way to explain it. On one occasion, I was at this location called Rhodes Hotel in Indiana. It was a notorious hotspot for the gangsters out of Chicagoland back in the day, and John Dillinger frequented it and everything else. Long story short, we were up in this upstairs bathroom, and my buddy David Weatherly was doing a ghost box session, and I was filming him. I was behind the camera, and I took another piece of equipment in to put in there with him to try to capture what was going on. And I bend over, and this wave of energy just hits me, and I kind of stumble backwards, and it knocked me dizzy for a second. There was nothing around. I was in the middle of the room when it happened. I stumbled back, leaned against the wall, and he's like, "What happened? What happened? You all right?" And I said, "No, man, something just hit me." And he was using an old style Hack Shack box, and he asked, "What did you do to Dave?" And it laughed. It said, "Ha ha ha! I hit him." And then he said, "Dude, you better sit down. You don't look right." So I sat down behind the camera again, and then he goes back to doing the ghost box, and he says, "What'd you hit him with?" And he says, "A shovel." Well, I kept feeling this tickling on my head, and we had about there was like 8 or 9 other people there, but they were downstairs, and we were doing this live on my channel. And I said, dude, I got to get out of here. I don't feel right. So he shut the ghost box off. We went downstairs. There's all these people there. And they're like, what happened? What happened? And I said, I don't know. And I felt that tickling on my head, and I reached up, touched my head, and I pulled down a handful of blood. I had a big knot on my head and a hole in my head. And it cracked my head open. Actually cracked my head open. Had a little cut on my head. And everyone saw it happen. They were watching the live show. You know, there was nothing where I could have fell down. I didn't fall down, hit my head on anything of that sort. And something had enough juice to where it cracked a little hole in my head and put a knot on my head. And that was pretty unnerving. And the very next day, we were there for like 5 days. David was kind of giving that spirit down the road about attacking me. And all of a sudden he said, my back. And it said slash you on the ghost box. And he said, my back's burning. And he had 2 shirts on. This was live on camera too.
Wow.
I said, come here. I picked his shirt up, and you could see these huge scratches just forming across his back. I mean, and they just kept forming, and it was really bright red. So we were both attacked, you know, and that's happened several different times at different locations I've been at. So when that kind of stuff happens, that's pretty unnerving.
Yeah, that certainly is. How many times do you think in your 30 years of doing this, you've been physically touched or attacked like that?
Oh, I've been touched many different times. Of course, I've done in the several hundreds, upwards of 1,000 investigations in that, you know, in 30 years. Been touched numerous times. You know, you felt like a little kid had touched my hand on more than one occasion, or grabbed my hand. Had been touched on the arms. I had we were at a very supposed negative location, and actually had a blood vessel pop in my eye. And I've never ever had anything like that happen to me ever before or since, but it was getting really, really creepy in there. We're getting a lot of negative responses pertaining to it was going to attack us, it was going to kill us, all this stuff. Uh-huh. And next thing I know, I got this huge pain in my eye, and you know, looked at it with a flashlight, and a blood vessel popped in my eyeball, and it was a big blood mark, and it took like 2 weeks for it to go away.
Wow!
I've been scratched on the neck. I've been scratched on the neck on different occasions, on the back, on the arm. You know, several different times I've been attacked by things.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I think on some of those locations, they were notorious criminal. Like, it was a brothel, and there was criminals there, and they know I was law enforcement. They didn't like me, so they wanted to let me know that.
Ah, that's a very interesting point. How often do you think something like what you're describing happened to you was the result of just an angry spirit, or maybe something a little bit more nefarious, such as a demonic activity?
On one occasion, I think it was possibly a demonic something or other, you know, something really negative in nature like that. But the other ones, I think, were a couple occasions, I think it was a spirit trying to get our attention, like, hey, I'm here, why can't you see me, type of thing. And then the other ones, you know, there was a couple that did not like me because I think it was the location, and it was a notorious criminal hangout, and they knew I was law enforcement, and they didn't like that, you know, because of the references we were getting on the ghost box and some of the EVPs. It was talking about you pig and you copper and all kinds of, you know, slang terms that criminals used to use for law enforcement back in those days. And then
interesting. Have you ever, I'm getting back to equipment for just a quick second, because hearing all this brings an event back to my mind. Have you ever had the opportunity to use the portal yet, the Steve Huff's invention?
Yes, I have one. He sent me one, number 5 that he made. Yeah, I've used it. It's a pretty cool tool. It cuts out a lot of the background noise and whatnot, so it's a pretty interesting piece of equipment.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure of it until we used it in an investigation with our friends from War Party Paranormal out of West Palm Beach, and got some really interesting hits on it. So I became a little bit more of a believer in that piece of equipment also. Well, it sounds like
I believe, Larry, that they can use whatever means necessary to communicate, whatever gives them enough energy, or I believe that they can use whatever they want. I don't believe in any one specific device. I think they can use just about whatever they want to communicate with us if they have enough juice.
Yep, I totally agree. Well, listen, we're going to take a break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes. This is Paranormal Stakeout. Your host, Larry Lawson.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout with your host, Larry Lawson. And tonight I've got Dave Spinks. What a conversation we're having, Dave. Some of the stuff that you were just describing, some pretty harrowing types of investigations you've been involved in. And you're thinking maybe just once or twice they were truly not demonic. Other than that, they were just mean spirits. Is that pretty correct? Pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think true demonic hauntings are very rare in nature. That's just my personal opinion. You have the flip side of that. Some people think you're either communicating with devils or angels, and that's it, period. I mean, there are just all kind of theories out there. But, my personal opinion is real true demonic hauntings and activity is very rare, if in my book.
Yeah. Well, keeping along these lines, tell me, what kind of case do you prefer to investigate? What's your favorite place to investigate, if you will?
I've been doing this long enough that I like just new and off the wall stuff. I like it all, really, Larry. Anything of the unexplained, supernatural, in the supernatural realm. That's what I'm all about. There's so many reports out there of this and that and the other happening, and people call me all the time. Hey, I've got this going on. Can you come check it out? Of course, I can't do them all, but I try to pick out the most different ones nowadays, the ones that are just totally off the wall. But, I always make sure I do a pretty good interview of the people calling me, ahead of time to try to weed out the ones that just want to try to get their name out there, think they're going to be on TV or something of that aspect. But, I look for them all. I just try to do some different ones that are more off the wall than the other ones nowadays, because I've done so many just normal locations that are, reported to be haunted, and done tons of residentials in my time. I kind of stay back from some of those unless I feel someone really needs some help, and then I go in and try to document what they're experiencing, and then I turn it over to clergy or whoever that their religious beliefs are in that particular family.
When you're doing a residential, if somebody comes to you with problems in their home, what is your best tool to help them? What do you do to help them if that's what they're asking for?
Well, I try, first of all, after I interview them pretty lengthy, I try to go in. If I think it's, they're the real deal and they're not using all kinds of drugs and whatnot, I go in and just try to document some of their claims. And if I can document several of those claims and I think it's the real deal, then we'll reach out to folks that I know that help folks in need and try to help them rid the location of what's going on there.
Do you have somebody on your team or somebody you're associated with that can help spirits cross over?
There's all kinds of folks that I know after doing this many years, and I try to reach out to the ones that are closest to that particular location, and say, hey, I got these folks and they're claiming this is going on. I went in, this is what I documented. Can you go in and try to help them out? That's just the way I work it nowadays.
Now, this is something that I've come across quite often. How often do you get somebody that is looking for help to get rid of the spirits or what they perceive their haunting is? And how often do you have folks say, oh, I'm glad they're here, I just want to know more about them? You got a percentage on that? Because
it seems like a lot of times folks, it depends, it's just each case is different. Some folks want them to be there because, number one, they think it's some relative of theirs or whatnot, and they don't want them to go, or they're not ready to let them go. And that can cause a haunting in itself, when you're going through the grieving period, and you don't want to let that person go. Sometimes that can cause that person's spirit to hang on, and until you're done in the grieving process. But that's a whole nother conversation.
True. And I had a spate, or just lately, it just seems most people want them to stay. They just want to know who's there. That's why I was wondering what you were running into.
Yeah, I've run into all kinds. Some people don't want them gone and they like having them around, but that's one of those slippery slopes you got to be careful of, because we really don't know what we're communicating with, at this point.
Good point. Good point.
It could be something negative in nature that's trying to gain your trust and get in good with you, and then bam, you have an attachment, and that's not good. It's just there's just so many different ways you could go with this stuff. And I've run into that. People call me, I go in, check it out. Well, we don't want them gone. And then here about 8 months later, they're calling me, I need help. I need help. So I've run into stuff like that before too,
And that, yeah.
Slippery slopes.
And that's something that I think happens out there a lot of times too. Folks that are just getting into the field, they really don't know what it is they're dealing with. Because you're absolutely right. We can have spirits contacting us and we don't know where they're coming in from or what their real intentions are. So that's an excellent point on your part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually had stuff try and follow me home from some of these really nasty locations. And it's not a fun thing. I try to tell folks that this, especially new people coming in the field, I'm often asked questions like that. And I say, hey guys, this stuff can be very dangerous. People have been possessed doing this. People have, look at the Mark and Debbie Constantino case. We can't say for sure that they had some kind of negative attachment, but look at that whole situation.
That was tragic. That was very tragic.
Yeah, and that stuff hits close to home. And I've known other investigators that have been doing this for a long time that have had tragic instances in their lives, and they swear up and down it was because something was attached to them. So you just never know what you're getting into when you're doing this. It can be very, very dangerous.
What's your advice to the novice or the beginning investigator after they've investigated whether it's a public building or a residence? What advice would you give them once they complete their investigation to avoid this issue?
Well, we're often asked this question too. We use our protection before we go into a place, and before we leave, we always do some cleansing, and we try to let the spirits know that they're not welcome to follow us, and we use some spiritual stuff to try to ward that off. I use stuff that pertains to my religious beliefs and other shamanic beliefs that my friend David Weatherly uses. And it seems to work fairly well, but it doesn't always stop them. Sometimes I've had things follow me.
Any particular event that you can share where a spirit followed you that it turned out to be negative?
Oh yeah. Well, I was in this one case where it was a notorious haunted house in Pennsylvania. All the locals called it a haunted house. Everybody knew it was a haunted house. It had a lot of tragic things happen, and it was also built right on top of Native American sacred burial grounds, and those graves were all desecrated. There was numerous white and Indian, wars, whites against Indians in that whole area way back when. And ever since that particular house was built, there was all these tragic incidences of suicides in it, murders, people dropping dead of heart attacks. People that lived there did not stay long. They ended up moving out and leaving all their belongings, just all these things, these different layers of things. Well, I went in with a team of people, and we lived in this house for over a month, investigated it every night. Long story short, I had the worst year of my life after that, with a lot of negative stuff going on. I was having dreams where something was attacking me. All these black hands were reaching out to try to grab me, and every night they got closer and closer, till finally one night they grabbed me, and I woke up with a scratch on my arm, and had some financial difficulties during that year, and a lot of other things. I was sitting in the living room, and when it really first kicked off, I was sitting in my house, and I heard what sounded like a light bulb pop. Okay. I was the only one in the house. I jumped up, looked around it, checked all the light bulbs. Every one of them was fine. They all worked. I turned them on, no broken glass anywhere. And then I had a smell of sulfur in the house, and that's what started it all after that investigation. So
interesting.
I truly feel that something did follow me home from there, and made my life a living hell for about a year.
So that's an important. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I went at the end of the story, I went and got cleansed by 3 different types of clergy, and everything seemed to turn around and start going back the right way for me after that. So, and I had to do a lot of different stuff at the house to get rid of that thing there. So it was, pretty intense stuff.
So this is an important note to our friends out there listening. If you're just getting into the field, and you remember, always get into this field for the right reason, to seek the truth, but understand bad things can happen, so take it seriously. This is not a game. So I appreciate that story, Dave.
Not a problem. I try to share that stuff with folks because I think people, they watch TV and they love the TV shows on the paranormal and they think, hey, I can do that, but they really have no clue what they're getting into.
And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this show, to get folks like you that are on the line out there doing the work, getting their hands dirty, to get information to folks that are interested in following us in the field. So your story there is really helpful, and I really appreciate it. You're talking a lot about your cases. Do you work with a team, or do you mostly work on your own?
I'm an independent. I've had teams before. Like I said, I'm an independent, but I also come together with my good friend Sean Austin and David Weatherly, and we formed a group called Society of the Supernatural. And when we do travel around quite often and a lot and do these really off the wall cases. And like I said, we don't just do ghosts. We check into reports of cryptids and unknown creatures people have seen, and UFOs as well. So, we do a little bit of everything, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, so you've got a full plate. You just don't handle the spiritual, but you look after all aspects of the paranormal, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I think I counted the other day. I did like 40 investigations this year in 2016. So almost one a week if you go back and look into it. But usually when we go out, we spend a whole week and we hit several different areas in 1 week when we go out together, us three. So, and then when I come home, I usually have local cases that I do that people call me about, and I kind of stay around the state of West Virginia and do those. Mm-hmm. But, we're very busy. We're always on the road doing something.
What's your average amount of time you spend on an investigation?
It just depends. Like if we're just staying there for one night, we usually start between 7 and 9 p.m. and we go till as long as we can go until we're just absolutely exhausted. Because as well as I do, some of these places just drain your energy, spiritual, mental, and your physical energy, just drain you out totally for whatever reason. And I think that they do that to gain energy from you so they can communicate, So, we do as long as I can. Sometimes we'll stay at a location for 2, 3, 4 nights, and try to document as much stuff as we can. It just depends what we're doing at any given moment.
Yeah, and you got to be careful too. You're talking about getting tired. Once you get too tired, you start making mistakes, and when you make mistakes, that's when problems happen, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Do you work with MUFON at all?
I have a little bit.
Let me interrupt you here, Dave, because I hear the music. So we're going to take our last break here. This is Larry Lawson, your host of Paranormal Stakeout. We'll be back to you after these important messages.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0009 courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, and tonight, what a conversation we're having with my friend David Spinks. I want to give you his website again real quick, www.davespinksparanormalinvestigations.com. I really encourage you to take a look at this. He's got some great information. And Dave, appreciate all of the information you're sharing with our listeners tonight, my friend.
Hey, no problem. That's what we're here to do, try to help folks and spread the word based off of our experience level,
Yeah, we are. And, having a guy like you with your experience in the field, doing the hard work, that's what I need my listeners to hear, what it's really like out there. Just before the break, we were talking about some of the other work that you do. And I was beginning to ask you if you dealt with MUFON very often with your UFO investigations.
Oh, I have a couple people that are in MUFON that I, report things to if I think it's legit. And, if I get a report from an individual and I go out and investigate it a little bit and see, what's what. And then I will say, hey, I'll call those people and say, hey, you might want to come out here and check this out. But other than that, I do it on my own with my buddy David Weatherly. And, we look into cases like that and we try to discern if it was really something otherworldly or just simply, if folks report a UFO in the sky, we try to discern if it was maybe a military aircraft or civilian aircraft, or, and just investigate it like you would if you're in law enforcement. You just got to go in and start interviewing the crap out of people and see what they say, and see if they're believable and if they're credible type people. That's one of the things you got to look for, and especially when it comes to UFOs. And I have an interesting enough background. One of my primary jobs in the military was walking circles around every type of known aircraft that we have, from not secret to top secret stuff. So I'm well versed in the types of military aircraft. I was in the U.S. Air Force, so
And again, thank you for your service. I'm going to digress for just a quick second because you hit on something super important, and it's a skill that, frankly, I think is lost in today's society, and that's our ability to talk to people, i.e., interview.
Absolutely.
A good, solid interview at the beginning of an investigation can do wonders, helping you to discern different types of evidence and what the real situation is. And so often we forget how to talk to people. I think it's a lost skill.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you, and another thing is getting people to talk to you. It's very hard, especially when it comes to the supernatural / paranormal world. People don't want to be labeled as crazy or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's hard to get them to open up. It really is. So, when you interview people, there's a lot of techniques you can use. And I feel, us being in law enforcement, we have a major advantage over folks when it comes to that aspect of it.
Absolutely. There's no doubt we do get some good training along those lines. Back to UFOs now. What's your most compelling case dealing with UFOs? Can you share that?
Believe it or not, I live in West Virginia, and I've had some crazy UFO cases reported here, and some of the most well-known cases in ufology are from here. So I've looked into some of the old cases, and I've actually witnessed a few things in the sky here myself, and same with my family members, that are really, really compelling. I had a sighting a couple of years ago in my backyard. Often in the summer, in the evenings, I would like to set out and have a fire, because I live on top of a mountain, and you can see really, really good. The sky's really clear. And I like to have a little fire and just kick back, maybe drink one, and just watch the sky. Well, for some reason, one night I stood up there and turned around completely, 360, turned around and was looking behind me, and I see a yellowish, pearlish white object coming across the horizon. And I mean, this thing was trucking. It had to be doing 10 to 15,000 miles an hour, because I saw it from the horizon to over my head within seconds. And, as soon as I saw it, I made a beeline for my truck because I wanted to get my 1,000-power binoculars out and get a good look at this thing. Well, as I run for my truck, it's almost over our heads. And the woman I was with at the time said it just made a 90-degree turn. Now, something going that fast, no human could survive something moving that fast and then making a 90-degree turn like that. There's just there's not a G suit that could withstand that and make a human live. I grabbed my binoculars out, and by the time I got my binoculars out, it was at a dead hover over our heads. It was probably, I'd say, 3,000 to 5,000 feet up in the air, and there was complete silence. This thing, bare minimum, it would have broke the sound barrier, and you would have heard a sonic boom. This thing did not make a sound. There was no flashing red, white, and green aircraft lights on this thing, not a sound. And I got a good look at it on my binoculars, and it shot straight up into space. Within a second, it was gone.
Wow.
And I was just standing there dumbfounded and started talking to the woman that was with me. And I was like, can you believe what we just saw? And she's like, totally freaked out. She was freaking out. She'd never seen anything like that, and so of course the next day I'm all over the internet searching to see if anyone else had seen this object. Turns out the same object was seen in several different states. It was seen in Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And one guy caught it on video, and I knew it was the same object because it was exactly the same thing I saw. So we did a MUFON report on it, and they published it. It was pretty intense. And as far as little green men, no, I haven't really had the chance to investigate anything like that, people being abducted or any of that sort. But I've investigated a lot of different sightings. I've seen pictures, people have showed me pictures they've taken. And probably about 75% of those are misidentified aircraft that I've investigated. But there's that small percentage that you're like, ooh, that could be something right there. So it's very interesting to me, and I love doing it.
Well, I also noticed, too, that in addition to investigating possible UFOs, you're right in the heart of Bigfoot country, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. This is a Bigfoot hotbed here in West Virginia. Just in my county alone last year, there was like 7 different eyewitness accounts. I've had my own encounter with one back when I was a kid. My grandpa called it the Monkey Man, my dad's dad. We spend a lot of I try to explain to folks here in West Virginia, we grow up from the time we're 5 years old. We're out in the woods hunting and fishing and everything else. We're pretty much walking around being taught how to hunt and survive in the woods as little kids. So we do spend a lot of time here, and this whole state is nothing but mountainous woods region. And I think you're from Ohio. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you.
Oh yeah.
So I'm surrounded by millions of acres of wilderness right where I live. So, you never know what you're going to see here from day to day. It could be a bear, it could be a herd of deer, it could be coyotes, whatever. And, I often tell people there could be something standing behind that tree right there, and you'd never know it was there. People do not pay attention to their surroundings. They are concentrating on their 9-to-5 job, worrying about the kids, worrying about what they're going to get on the dinner table, that kind of thing. And they're just that's a
conversation you and I can have. That whole issue of not being aware of your surroundings and people not noticing things. You and I could have a whole hour conversation just on that. Your career, your background is so varied.
Yeah, I mean, and I try to explain that to folks. How often do you look up in the sky? How often do you watch the woods by your house, or when you're going down the road, or how often do you take a peek and see, just look at your surroundings. One of the first things you're taught in law enforcement, and this is when I see a person, the first thing I look at is their hands. I'm seeing what they're doing with their hands because I want to know they're reaching for a weapon or what they're doing. It's when you do it so often, it's like second nature. But if you don't do it, you're more, like I said, you're more concentrating on everyday life, going to work, getting off, whatever you're doing with the kids or whatever.
Absolutely.
Just not trained to do that.
Well, Dave, I'm going to be honest with you. I've got to have you back on the show. We didn't even touch on half the stuff I would have really liked to tonight. Your travels around the world, not to mention a little bit more of your work with cryptozoology. Just really have enjoyed this time together. Now, your website, www.davespinks.paranormalinvestigations.com. Are there any other sites that you can recommend to our listeners?
Let me correct you on that. It's www.davespinks.paranormalinvestigator.com.
Sorry. Thank you for correcting me, my friend.
If folks go to that website, they have links to, we have 2 YouTube channels. One's called Real Supernatural. That's mine as an individual. And then we have Society of the Supernatural that me, David, and Sean all do our work on together. And a lot of these investigations we do, guys, are live. There's no editing. So what you see is what you get. It's the real deal. And people really like it because they can join in and they feel like they're there with us. They're experiencing what we're experiencing at the same time we are. So that's what we try to bring to folks. We got a DVD series coming out soon, and we have books that are being published. David's got Black-Eyed Children, Strange Intruders and Wood Knocks, which deals with Bigfoot. There's just all kinds of stuff that we've got coming out recently and in the near future. So please check out the website and check out our YouTube channels, and our Facebook, all the links to all that stuff's on that website, and any current events we got coming up this coming year will be listed on there. It's full of all kind of paranormal stuff.
Outstanding. Well, like I said, I can't thank you enough as we begin to wind down here. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. We're going to have you back. It's just that simple, Dave. We got a lot more to discuss, and it sure is nice having a brother law enforcement officer on the show with me. I do also want to remind everybody www.xzbn.net. Check out our program schedule, as well as www.paranormalstakeout.com. Please join us out there. And Dave, once again, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for your service to our country. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again.